Here's something I've been sitting with for a few days, and it's time I say it plainly. No dramatic buildup, just straight talk. There's a version of this Browns offseason everyone keeps arguing about online, and then there's the real version, the one actually unfolding right now in Berea. Behind closed practice fields and quiet front office phone calls, nobody's filming. The gap between those two versions is bigger than most people realize, so let me walk you through what's actually happening, because by the end, I think you'll look at this roster differently. Training camp is bearing down on us, and if you've spent any time near Brown's social media lately, you already know where the conversation keeps landing. Quarterback, always the quarterback. Every hot take, every argument in the comments eventually circles back to one question: who's under center when the lights come on in September? I understand why. Quarterback is the most visible position in this sport. But I want to pull you away from that noise for a few minutes because there's a story happening 5 yards in front of the quarterback that nobody's giving enough credit to, and it might end up being the most important development of this whole offseason. I'm talking about the offensive line. Not glamorous, I know. Nobody's cutting highlight reels out of clean down blocks. But here's the truth that gets buried every year around this time. None of the flash matters if the trenches don't hold up first. You can roster the most explosive playmaker in the league, a quarterback with a cannon for an arm, and all of it evaporates the moment there's no pocket to throw from, no crease to run through. We watched exactly that nightmare last season here in Cleveland. Broken protections, a run game with nowhere to go because the guys up front simply weren't holding ground. It wasn't pretty, and it wasn't a coincidence. That's what happens when your offensive line isn't built right. So, heading into this camp, here's what actually has my attention, and honestly, it's given me more optimism than the quarterback drama has. Cleveland's front five looks like it's finally coming together into something resembling real stability, something this franchise hasn't consistently had in years. 4 of the 5 starting jobs feel about as locked in as anything can be this early. Rookie Spencer Fano looks ready to start from day one, no training wheels needed. Zion Johnson is positioned to anchor a foundational role up front. Titus Howard rounds out a trio that, on tape and on paper, genuinely has some teeth to it. But the piece I really want to slow down on, the one that tells you everything about how this front office is actually thinking, is Elgton Jenkins. When the Browns pulled him away from Green Bay in free agency back in March, the reaction wasn't exactly celebratory. 2 years, $24 million, $12 million a year for a lineman who'd battled real durability concerns throughout his career. A lot of fans and analysts shook their heads. I remember scrolling through takes calling it an overpay, a panic move, Barry throwing money at a name instead of solving the actual problem underneath it. I'll be honest, at first glance I understood that skepticism. But the more I dug into how this front office actually plans to deploy Jenkins, the more that overpay narrative fell apart in my head. Because this isn't just another guard signing. This is one of the most positionally flexible offensive linemen currently playing professional football, and that kind of chess piece versatility is worth far more than a highlight reel ever could be. Here's what makes him genuinely different. His natural home, where he built his reputation and did his best work, is guard. That's where he's most comfortable, most dominant. But last season in Green Bay, the Packers moved him to starting center, a completely different assignment with a totally different mental load, protection calls, communication before the snap even happens. He didn't just survive that transition, he handled it at a high level. No drop-off, no red flags. Now zoom out across his career. 7 seasons in this league, and when you trace where he's actually lined up, it's not just guard and center. He's logged real snaps at left tackle too, over 300 of them, another 300 plus at right guard. Think about what that means. That's not a guy thrown into one desperate emergency situation. That's a lineman who has proven across multiple schemes and multiple quarterbacks that he can slide almost anywhere along the front and not become the weak link. That's rare in this league, and that's exactly why this signing matters so much for this specific roster. Center remains an open competition right now. It is not settled. And that uncertainty is exactly the kind of situation that can quietly wreck an offensive line's chemistry if there's no contingency plan sitting in your back pocket. Here's how I see this playing out. If rookie Parker Brailsford shows the coaching staff through actual reps that he's ready to handle center from day one, Jenkins simply stays right where he's most dangerous, at guard. Everybody wins. But if Brailsford needs more seasoning, which happens constantly with rookie interior linemen, because that position asks so much mentally before it asks anything physically, the Browns don't have to blow up the whole offensive line to compensate. They just slide Jenkins over to center, and the rest of the unit stays intact around him. Luke Whippler is also floating around as a depth option at center, though most signs point to him being the fallback rather than the primary answer once camp sorts itself out. That's the entire point of a signing built like this one. Andrew Berry didn't just add a body to the lineup on paper. He added an insurance policy that also happens to be a genuinely good football player in his own right. Think about what that gives Kevin Stefanski. It gives him freedom to let the best 5 linemen actually compete and win jobs on merit during camp, knowing the structure doesn't collapse if a rookie isn't quite ready. He can shuffle pieces around Jenkins like a chess player repositioning his most trusted piece, and the formation never falls apart. That's the kind of quiet roster construction that never trends on social media, but absolutely shows up once the lights come on in September. And it's not just fans coming around on this either. The league is noticing too. ESPN recently published a ranking of the top interior offensive linemen in football, built off votes from players, coaches, and front office executives, the exact people whose job it is to evaluate talent for a living. Jenkins didn't quite crack the top 10, but he landed as an honorable mention, right on the outside edge of that list. Honestly, the ranking placement wasn't even the most compelling detail. What stopped me cold was a quote from an anonymous AFC executive who participated in the voting. He said he was genuinely surprised Jenkins didn't carry more trade value around the league. He acknowledged the durability concerns are real. He wasn't spinning that away, but he still called Jenkins a genuinely high-quality player capable of lining up almost anywhere across an offensive front. Sit with that for a second, because it deserves more weight than most fans give it. That's not a fan account overhyping a favorite player. That's someone inside an actual NFL front office, someone whose livelihood depends on correctly evaluating talent, saying openly that this player is underrated relative to what he actually brings. And I think that's exactly where a lot of us go wrong as fans. We fixate on a player's age on a spreadsheet or an injury history summarized in a headline, and we miss what the people studying film every day are actually seeing. Yes, Jenkins is 30 now. I won't pretend that number means nothing. But positional versatility like his doesn't just evaporate because a player crosses some arbitrary age line. If anything, in today's league, that flexibility becomes more valuable as a player ages, not less, because it hands coaching staffs options a one-dimensional player simply cannot provide. And when you actually run the math, $12 million a season for a lineman capable of plugging multiple holes depending on how the rest of the roster shakes out, that number stops looking like a reckless gamble. It starts looking like a genuine bargain hiding in plain sight. If Jenkins can simply stay on the field, and I'll be honest, that remains the real lingering question mark here, this signing has a real shot at going down as one of the smartest, most underappreciated moves of Andrew Berry's entire offseason. Not the flashiest headline back in March, but maybe months from now, the one move that quietly held the whole operation together. Now let me shift gears completely, because there's a second story swirling around this franchise right now, and unlike the offensive line, this one is anything but quiet. It refuses to die no matter how many times it seems like the conversation should quiet down. I'm talking about Shedeur Sanders and the trade rumors that just will not stop. Here's what's actually happening. According to multiple sources plugged into league circles, there are teams genuinely, seriously interested in potentially acquiring the young quarterback before this season even gets underway. This isn't a single throwaway rumor from one outlet. It's a pattern, multiple independent voices circling back to the exact same name. So who's involved? Let's run through it, because this isn't random speculation for engagement. One credible recent report has both the Dallas Cowboys and Tampa Bay Buccaneers emerging as legitimately realistic destinations if something were to materialize. The Los Angeles Rams have also been floated repeatedly, And here's the part that made me sit up straight. According to reporting through Cooper Kleinberg of PFSN, ESPN Cleveland radio host Tony Rizzo said publicly, on air, that the Browns are actively fielding calls regarding Sanders. Actively. That word carries real weight. That's not a front office passively listening if someone happens to call. That implies ongoing conversation, other teams checking the temperature repeatedly, trying to figure out whether Cleveland would even entertain moving on from him. Kleinberg took it further, suggesting this growing chatter makes it increasingly plausible Sanders could end up being the odd man out in an increasingly crowded Cleveland quarterback room. Now, before this spirals into something bigger than it actually is, I need to hit the brakes here because context matters. Nothing here has been confirmed by the team. The Browns have not stood up and said Sanders is available. There is no trade close to happening, nothing official on the table. What we're dealing with is smoke, reports, and whispers swirling as camp approaches, not confirmed fire. But when this many outlets and this many league sources keep circling the same name, it's worth paying attention to, even while staying skeptical. So why would teams even be making these calls in the first place? The case isn't crazy on paper. Sanders' rookie season wasn't spectacular. I won't sugarcoat it. 7 touchdown passes against 10 interceptions in fairly limited playing time. Those numbers don't jump off the page. But a number of evaluators around the league still believe his physical tools, his mobility around a collapsing pocket, and his arm talent give him real long-term upside a single rookie stat line simply doesn't capture. That's exactly the profile that makes a team looking for a developmental quarterback willing to pick up the phone and see what the cost would actually be. Financially, this is where it gets genuinely interesting. Sanders is currently in year 2 of his 4-year rookie contract, meaning whoever controls him has him under team control through 2028. If another team acquired him via trade, his base salary for 2026 would sit at just over $1 million. That is an extraordinarily team-friendly number for a young quarterback with real upside on his rookie deal. Exactly the kind of contract that makes rebuilding or quarterback-needy franchises willing to take the swing. From Cleveland's side, trading Sanders would reportedly create roughly $781,000 in salary cap space, while the Browns would absorb about $335,000 in dead cap tied to his original signing bonus. As for compensation, projections floating around suggest Cleveland could realistically expect something in the mid to late round draft pick range, with one specific projection landing on a 4th-round selection in the 2027 draft. Break down these landing spots individually, and they're not random guesses either. In Dallas, Sanders could sit and develop behind Dak Prescott with zero pressure to play immediately, learning the pro game at his own pace behind a proven starter. In Tampa Bay, he'd be learning under Baker Mayfield. And yes, there's an undeniably interesting layer given Mayfield's own history in Cleveland. And the Rams keep surfacing in these conversations partly because of their track record of developing quarterbacks methodically, planning years ahead rather than reacting to a single bad stretch. But stepping back from the fits and the cap numbers, here's the real question this whole situation raises. What exactly is Cleveland's actual long-term plan at quarterback? Is this simply standard off-season homework, front offices doing what they always do, checking in on virtually every player who might conceivably be available, the way teams quietly probe dozens of names every year without it meaning much? Or is this front office genuinely, seriously open to moving on from a young quarterback before he's even been given a real, extended opportunity to prove what he can do? Honestly, I don't think we get a clean answer until we actually watch this camp play out. Every practice rep, every preseason snap, every quarterback decision Stefanski's staff makes over these next few weeks is going to get dissected by fans and analysts alike. If Sanders comes out and impresses in camp, I'd bet a lot of this trade speculation quietly fades into the background before the season even starts. But if he struggles, and if another team steps up with an offer, this front office finds hard to pass on. This conversation gets a whole lot more real and fast. So when you step back and look at both of these stories side by side, they point toward the exact same conclusion. The Browns are walking into one of the most consequential training camps this roster has faced in years. Full stop. Up front, the offensive line situation looks meaningfully better than it did a season ago, and a big part of that comes down to the versatility Elgton Jenkins brings to the table. If that unit gels the way it appears capable of gelling, and if Jenkins stays healthy through camp and into the season, it could genuinely transform the outlook of this entire offense. Better protection, more push in the run game, stability at the position that determines whether everything else on that side of the ball even has a chance to function. That's the kind of foundational improvement that tends to matter more over a full season than any single flashy offseason headline ever does. Meanwhile, the quarterback room keeps generating question marks that aren't resolving themselves on their own. Whether the Shedeur Sanders rumors ultimately lead somewhere or completely fizzle out by September, the simple fact that other teams around the league are paying this much attention to Cleveland's quarterback situation tells you something real. The league is watching, evaluating, and almost certainly making calls of their own behind the scenes that we as fans probably won't hear about until much later, if ever. Every decision this front office makes over the coming weeks, who starts, who sits, who gets traded, who gets extended, carries genuine long-term weight for exactly where this franchise ends up headed from here. And honestly, that's what makes this particular training camp feel different from the ones that came before it. There's no coasting into this season on reputation alone. Every rep counts for something real. Every decision echoes forward into the fall. And I don't think any of us fully understand what this offseason actually meant until we see how these two stories, the quiet stability building up front and the loud uncertainty still swirling at quarterback, finally collide once the games actually start to count.